Hey guys, my name is Grant, and I want to talk about one of the most fundamental problems that I see in almost every game. The most important individual decisions that you make in most games are going to be revolved around what items you buy. And with that being true, it's pretty unfortunate to say that the vast majority of people who play don't really think about their items at all, and just kind of buy whatever either looks good, something that's kind of in the acceptable item pool for the hero they're playing, or they just copy a build straight up. And while copying a build is kind of okay to do when you're learning a hero, once you kind of get comfortable with the hero, it really becomes a detriment and really will hold you back in progressing. Most people would agree that the acceptable builds are different for a mid-tiny and a support tiny. Even though it's the same exact hero, people would say that a support tiny and a mid-tiny should not be itemizing the same. But I would say the same is true for pretty much any hero, even if it's playing exact same position every game, the same items are not going to apply. I think the number one tip that I can give is to build items that represent the playstyle that you want to go for. Buying items that don't help us play the way that we either need to play or want to play are just going to be kind of throwaway money. Sure, they might still give you some stats and be useful in some niche situations, but if we zoom out and look at the big picture and look across all the games, buying the items that help us in each of the individual games is going to help us an immense amount. I know all this talk is kind of big picture and kind of vague, but let's take a look at a couple examples and kind of zoom in on what I'm kind of saying here. So for this first example, let's look at PA. PA is a pretty straightforward hero where early game you kind of have two item routes that you can go, whether that be the Deso BKB rush or going for Battle Fury and then kind of scaling into some later game items. So here's really the crux of what I'm getting at here. If we look at any high rank game, look at any pro player playing a pub, playing carry PA, and we cut the bottom third off the screen so we can't see their items, so we have no clue what they're building or anything. Just by watching the game itself, we should be able to tell what items they buy, and not because they hit BKB and we see it, just based on where they play, how they play, and the kind of moves that they're making. If we see a PA that's just kind of sitting back, hitting a bunch of neutrals, not getting engaged, they see enemies grouping up, they're going to TP to the other side of the map and then start farming there. That's going to be a PA that's going Battle Fury probably. If you see a PA farming aggressively with their team, and when fights happen, they kind of show up and get some picks on the edges of fights, probably a PA with Deso BKB. You're not going to see great players build a Battle Fury and then group up with their team and look to take fight. You're also not going to see great players playing PA who have a BKB and a Desolator and are farming the safest camps on the map for 5 minutes straight. I'm not going to break down why these playstyles are what they are. I think most people know what the items do. BKB is not a great fighting item, it's a farming item. Deso BKB don't help you hit creeps very much, they help you hit heroes. So you should do what your items allow you to do. And now that process shouldn't go the way I just said it. You shouldn't have these items and then try to have your playstyle match them. That's the problem with copying builds. If you take a build of a PA and they go Deso BKB and you just blindly follow it, you shouldn't then be saying, okay, this is a game I really need to fight in. Because it might be a game that's horrible for fighting early, and it might be a game that's fantastic for you actually sitting back and farming. You need to make that determination first and let that decision influence your items. You should load into a game and see that you have a team that's really good at 4-manning, they can make a bunch of space for you and the enemy team's not going to pressure you very much, and then say, I want Battle Fury. Or maybe your team really needs you to fight, so you're going to go Deso BKB. And the thing you might be saying is, I'm a really low ranked player, I'm not going to make these decisions correct. I think that is completely fine. At least you made a decision, thought about it, and then followed through. Then you have this full picture of this game that you can look at and you can actually learn from it. If you build some items and then play like a completely separate way than the items enable you to play, you're not going to be able to look at the game and figure out what the real problems are. It's just going to be a complete mess. There's going to be 500 things that you can look at and say there's different mistakes here, there's different mistakes here, but you're not going to be able to really practically make decisions from that. It's totally fine to make guesses about the game, think that you want to be involved early, build Deso BKB, start getting involved, have you get punished for it and it not work out, and then you can learn from that. Then you can determine whatever it was that kind of kept that playstyle from being good. If you see that again, then you can know that you should go Battle Fury or some other item build. A way that you can practice this is if there's a hero that you're looking to play or start playing, or there's a hero that you really like playing and want to improve your item builds on, find some high-rated pubs with that hero in it, look at the scoreboard at the end of the game and check what items that hero has, and then go back and then determine what those items allow that hero to do. So look at the final items, go through the scrubber and look what items they got and what order they got them, and then kind of make a guess in your head as to how the hero is going to play based on the items that they got. And then you can go back, watch the replay, see if you're right, see if you're wrong, and you can kind of use that to see a good amount of what people are building in certain situations, and that's going to help you pick up on them when you see those situations in your own games. Okay, so back to Puck. Mid hero has a lot of items that they can get early, builds a lot of around 2,000 gold items, and then just kind of piles those up for the first kind of 2 or 3 items. I'm just going to look at 3 very basic builds that Pucks kind of go. There's slight derivations on all of these, but I'm going to say these might be the 3 most common that you see. So the first thing is going to be just a good old-fashioned Blink Rush. This used to be the go-to Puck build, but kind of has fallen out of favor as of recently. But when do we actually want to do this? Well, like we said, let's look at what Blink enables us to do. An early Blink is going to let us get on top of people without them knowing, drop Dream Coil, and it's going to make us not have to use Illusory Orb to initiate. So we're going to be able to amp our damage a little bit, get better coils, and just kind of enable us to get these ganks because heroes aren't going to be able to see us coming. So what are the types of games where we look to build this? It's an initiation tool. So if we don't have any other initiation on our team, might be a good idea to get a Blink, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the first item. So when would we want to Blink as a first item? Well, if there's heroes that we kind of need to catch, but we can't catch without Blink. So if there's AMs on the other team, something like a Storm Spirit, Wop, any of these heroes that really need to be coiled to be able to be locked down or killed. If we don't have any other heroes on our team that can do that, early Blink is great. Now let's say we have Centaur on our team and our safe lane or something like a Faceless Void, and you have all the initiation in the world in the lockdown. You probably don't need to rush a Blink or get it early because you're not going to be the initiation anyways. We don't need to stack more on the initiation stat when we're not going to use it. That's when you might go something like Bot's Witchblade, which allows you to split push much better, become more involved in fights across the map, where if your Centaur does find a pick, or your Void TPs up to Chrono a solo hero, you can always bots there, have some extra damage on top of your autos, which can help you get those kills. But if we go this build, we should not be looking to set up all the kills. We should be looking to play reactively to heroes that will set up the kills. We should be playing behind the Centaur instead of in front of the Centaur. Another build that we can go is something like Yules into Blink or Yules into another item. Whatever, this is an item that pucks will get early quite often if they really need it. They're against a hero that builds Orchid or something like a Silencer that has Global Silence, and they just are going to really need that Yules, otherwise they're not going to be able to participate in fights. Now, I'm not saying if the other team has these kinds of silencers, you have to get Yules. This is kind of another one of those dichotomies where there's two acceptable builds. You can either get the Yules, or you can go bots. If you go Yules, that means you're going to be involved in fights, and you should be involved in fights then. And if you go bots, that means you're going to kind of avoid fights and just kind of split push. If you see a puck on your team who gets bots and shows up to all these fights where he's just going to die without a defensive item, that is a bad build. If you see your puck going Yule Scepter, and then he's running all over the map and split pushing and not going to be able to connect on any kills, that's another wrong build. Should have had bots at that point. And like I said, there's hundreds of different combinations of these items that even just puck can go for. But by learning what these different items allow you to do and what they kind of amplify, the strengths they amplify for your hero, will let you make decisions that will make your playstyle so much better. And again, since there are so many options, you are going to be wrong with your guesses a lot of the time. And that's okay. If you commit to a playstyle and you think like 10 minutes in, oh, this is kind of wrong, I should be playing this way instead. If you're already committed to buying the item, don't screw yourself over at that point. Play based on your items. Last thing I want to cover here is kind of the items that you will buy as more of support heroes instead of the core heroes. Supports are a bit different because there's a group of items that are kind of just classified as these support items that pretty much every support kind of just picks their different things from. This makes support item builds a lot less hero specific and much more game specific. I'm going to look at Snapfire here because Snapfire is a hero that does go for kind of a wide variety of these items, kind of picks from the extremes. Just looking across the top tier Snapfire players right now, we're seeing everything from Blink Rush, Force Staff, Glimmer Cape, Drums, Vlads, Mech, Medallion, all sorts of things. And every single one of these items allows Snapfire to do something different. Even Blink and Force Staff, which seem somewhat similar, are completely different in their usage. If you get a Blink Dagger, that means you're going to want to be initiating, being the first one in on fights, and if you're getting a Force Staff, that means you're probably using it to reposition your teammates in fights and be more defensive. Even that small thing is like what I was saying earlier, where you can just watch the player playing and kind of determine the items. If you see a Snapfire in the front line, they're way more likely to have a Blink Dagger than a Force Staff. The problem becomes when you are lower MMR, and you don't know the difference, and you are building Blink Dagger and staying on the back, or you're frontlining with a Force Staff, and you're dying before you're able to save a teammate with it. I will acknowledge that I think buying support items is a bit more difficult. Even though there's overall fewer items that all supports will buy, rather than all the items that cores will buy, I think it's more important that supports pick the exact correct item than cores. Because of that, my major advice would be kind of look over all the support items, all 20 or however many there are, and really break down what they enable you to do. If you get a good vision of what all these items do in your head, it's going to be extremely easy for you to pick out what the problems are going to be in the game and solve those problems. Since you're getting far less gold and far less items, it is very crucial that you make those item decisions correct, because you're not going to be able to make up for it an item or two from now, because you might not ever get there. Again, it's okay to make these assumptions and be wrong about it and learn from it. I'm just asking that you do make the decision. You do actually think about what items you need, rather than just looking and being like, oh, Force Staff seems fun, I'm going to buy that. That's okay to do, but if you're really looking to get better, building the right items is one of the biggest keys to allowing you to win these close games. That's kind of the macro view of this topic. I know that I could go over each hero and look at every build that they could go, and that would probably be best, but I don't want people just to be copying something. I want to give you the tools to be able to make these determinations going forward. If you take 40 seconds at the start of every game to try to determine what your role is going to be, and then 2 or 3 minutes after each game, kind of reflecting on if you were right or if you were wrong, that little bit of time every game is going to add up. It 100% will. You have time between games, you're going to be queuing anyway, just give it a quick thought, maybe write it down on a notepad however you want to, or just throw it in the back of your mind and hope that it comes back to you later. Besides that, thanks for watching. You might want to consider subscribing if you haven't. I'm kind of throwing out a decent amount of videos right now. That's all I got. Thanks.